While earning his Master's of Fine Arts at UC Davis, Rob developed an interest in entomology through incorporating bees in his art practice. He was influenced by Eric Newson, who at the time was
It started
apiarist. Since then, his main focus has shifted to honeybees. Coming full circle, Rob entered the UC Davis Master Beekeeper Program. Serge Lebesque was another major influence on his techniques of non-treatment beekeeping. That is beekeeping without resorting to chemical treatments. Over 25 years, Robert built up a commercial scale operation in Napa County where the grape industry rules the roost, which makes it quite difficult on the honeybees for that matter. He became inspirational leader and educator for regenerative beekeeping in Northern California. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me. It's a little interesting for me. I think you kind of hit it on the head there about this idea that, I think I came to this from a very unique kind of angle where I always hear people talk about how they got into beekeeping. And, you have, 53 people there. And I think that each one of us came to it in a very different way. But most of the time you hear that maybe an uncle or some other relative or a friend or a neighbor or someone was into beekeeping. I came to it a little differently in that I grew up in the veterinary field. And I was working on a Master's of Fine Art at UC Davis, kind of exploring, the honor and dignity to animals. And I was really focused on Egyptian funerary rites. And by the time I had gotten to Davis, I probably had mummified, following the Egyptian recipe, maybe 20 different animals. And the beekeeping for me was a way to say, how can I seal these art objects, these sacred pieces, in a way that was, showed them reverence. I didn't want to just coat them with something that, like shellac or some chemical. So I thought to myself, maybe I could get the bees to do it for me. So that's how I got introduced to beekeeping. I knew nothing about bees prior to getting into them. Although in my veterinary experience, I was always very drawn to, the wild animals and, reptiles and exotic animals. But I spent most of my time working with puppies and kittens. So it's a little bit of a stretch, but I did jump from that into beekeeping, and it felt like kind of a natural fit for me. Okay, let me see if I could do this right. So I guess maybe that was 20 years ago now. It feels a little crazy to me, maybe a little more. Something happened to me that I felt like the art world was a little bit fickle. So coming out of my big show in New York, 3 days before 9/11, I kind of started looking at things a little differently. And the whole time I was working in the arts, this idea of beekeeping was kind of this huge ball rolling behind me that took very little effort. So I guess as a baby beekeeper, we're all doing that. I felt like, any hive I could get into. There weren't a whole lot of beekeepers here in Napa. I think the only club at the time was the Diablo Club. And I hooked up with a guy there named Major. I don't know if you know that guy, Major Brunzel. He's an awesome guy. Yep, there he goes. Phil sees him. I love Major, man. To this day, I love that guy. And he got me my first colony of bees. So here's some of the veterinary stuff. You can see everybody x-rays, fiberglass donkeys. You'll see that donkey later. These are the scout films. And this is kind of what I would do all day. I wasn't very interested in being a veterinarian. I was more, I I really enjoyed part of a team in the operating, in the operating sense. And I really enjoyed that piece of it, the surgical part. So I didn't spend a lot of time out in the front. I was more in the back working with doctors. My master's, I got my master's in year 2000. And these were some of the guys I was inspired by. I don't know if you've seen that, Richard Avedon. He did a series of photographs. This is a beekeeper from Davis, an albino beekeeper, and Matthew Barney also incorporated bees into his work. Here's some of my stuff that I was doing. And then I got into bees, and I guess at some point I started doing cut comb, and I just found this slide thinking, oh my God, I can't believe people would eat that if I, mummy honey, for real? But I was really into, starting to push forward with beekeeping at that point. Then this happened to me in 2003. I had a son, and my son was born prematurely and was 2 pounds at birth. So it kind of put me off all my games. I still kept a couple colonies of bees, but there's Davis with his first sting to his eye. And he's been working with me ever since. There's that donkey I was looking at earlier. So about this time, I started really pulling back from the veterinary field and doing more art-related stuff. This was an interesting show they wanted me to do at the Mission Cultural Center. And the idea behind this piece for me was that if things continued on the path that we were going on, that these migratory workers would have to bring bees up across the border, or there wouldn't be a whole lot of work for them. So this is a fiberglass donkey full of bees. It's vented out his backside that went through a bunch of offices and then across a bunch of desks and out a window. And the bees would come and go through this office space. I even put bees inside of a bear mannequin. I really liked this piece. I thought it was pretty spectacular, the way the bees would come and go through this bear's mouth. The thing is, though, it was an angry bear. I kind of needed a more docile bear to fit kind of my theme of, I didn't like the idea that it was an angry bear. You can see, I can't see a scroll, but down on the bottom there, I introduced a feral colony of bees into a Victorian dollhouse for a show at, I think this was in Sonoma. And it's pretty wild. Look, that colony totally filled that dollhouse out. Then at some point, I got a grant from Levi Strauss, and they helped me kind of realize this project. I have a 1967 Airstream Overlander that has a floor-to-ceiling observation hive in it. And we would take that thing all around and go to the Heirloom Festival, or we would go up there to the Hopland. And we spent a lot of time educating people out of this, the Airstream. That's what it looks like when it's full. The bees come and go through that outside of it. I love this piece, and we spent a lot of time doing that. What was really great for me is you would be able to interact with people and really educate them about bees in a safe environment so they felt safe. And we would show up at these events and we would open up the doors and people would not leave this trailer. And it was kind of cool for us too, because we learned so much. When the Airstream wasn't out on the road, all my buddies and all the beekeepers in town would all come and sit back there on that, on that loungy area. And we would drink beer and talk about bees. And really kind of what this did for me personally was it solidified in our region, bees really wanted to be in the vertical configuration. And how I saw that is that the brood would move up and down. And in the winter, this time of year, it would be down around your knees. And then as spring and summer came on, you would see this colony fill out, and they would want to move up and down in that vertical space. That kind of solidified that for me. Here's a bunch of people looking at it. You know, we met Alice Waters at the Heirloom Festival. She was a really big supporter of this. The other thing is I teach at a Montessori school. So we would take the Montessori kids out with us and throw them in the trailer with all these people and have them educate people as well. That felt great to me to be able to share that. And I think at some point I could never really fully get away with from the art thing. And I till this day, I still like, you know, my kid's grown up, he's 18, but I've pilfer his toy box, or at a garage sale, look at the bottom of the toy box and find little toys to put inside the hive and see what the bees would do. To me, it's really fascinating if you look at how the bees build around this little baby. I found I put a lot of babies inside of hives and religious icons. I felt like if anybody could help the bees, because by this point, things are starting to circle the drain as far as bee colonies are dying at an alarming rate. CCD had already hit. And I felt like I could give them something by putting things inside the hive. And if, you know, if anybody could help them, it would be, you know, the Mary and Jesus. It didn't help though. I would also look at, obviously put letters in there, but those flowers are brooches of my grandmother. And at this point, I really started thinking about the things I was putting in the hive and maybe telling the bees stories. And, you know, they talk a lot about telling the bees, and, you know, that's coming up as a reoccurring theme, how you're supposed to tell the bees if someone dies. I would start sticking things inside the hive that felt like important to me. At some point, that I became the poster child for beekeeping in Napa. And, you know, I was getting in a lot of trouble for it, but it was really interesting. On the flip side of that, they were always asking me to go into the office and tell them what's going on with the bees in Napa Valley, because they knew I had a good pulse on it. I don't know when this is, 2012 or so, where we were getting the bees legalized. But many times I would come home and they'd red tag my house and, you have way too many bees on your property. Yeah, okay, maybe I did. No guy needs 20 colonies of bees on a postage size stamp house in downtown Napa, but I was kind of moved to kind of lead a group of people, and we went and we started at the planning commission and went through the city council and got code. You know, they revisited the code here in Napa. Not the best, but we haven't had any problems. It seems like I'm the only guy who ever gets reported. This is us talking about it, saying there's no real reason we shouldn't be able to keep bees in the city limits, right? The one thing I did find with that, you know, is this idea that it kind of opened up this floodgate. And I don't know that in retrospect it was the best idea, because what it did was people started bringing bees into Napa like crazy. And there was a time that I could rear queens in downtown Napa, and then within 2 years, the guy down the street from me had 5 hives. The guy a block over had 7 hives. The other guy, and we couldn't, you know, they were just bringing in bees from all over the place. And we started to see real complications with, you know, this influx of bees that weren't really, you know, they didn't recognize the environmental clues. They were people, you know, I don't know, what time is it now in Hawaii? We could probably call Hawaii right now and they'll send you a queen, right? And I really started to see issues with that, and how my bees were building up in the winter, and started to see more loss with what I saw as bees that weren't able to, of course they understand the sun traveling on the horizon. All bees recognize that. But I think the more subtle details of in environmental conditions. Not all these bees were recognizing it. I guess one thing I really thought a lot of black belts in beekeeping, although I do have a black belt that says beekeeper on it. And if there was, man, the Bruce Lee of beekeeping to me would be Tom Seeley. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but he's the man. I feel like he gets it. He's in line with who I am as a beekeeper. And I really admire him as a guy who's, you know, far away. And it just, it was amazing when we waited and waited and waited for one of these big players to come out and say, like, this is how you really should be keeping bees, right? And then he did that thing, that Bee Audacious thing out here in Marin. And, you know, we were all sitting there front row and he unveiled it, man, that Darwinian beekeeping. And we were just throwing up high fives, and all my crew was just like, God damn, we've been waiting for this for so long. You know, was it going to be Marv Splevik, or was it going to be Tom Seeley, or was it going to be Randy Oliver? Who was it going to be that said we really need to be looking at things a little differently in our beekeeping? In my opinion, I'm not going to post up here, though, and tell you guys how to keep your bees or how you should be keeping them. It made sense to me. I feel like plastic foundation sucks, man. I find there's better uses for it than in your hive. I like to put it between my follower boards if I'm moving a hive. You know, it's great. 2 of them are great for picking up leaves. I found they're really good to skid on your bike. You can skid on them and they'll drag underneath your rear tire for a long time. But I don't know that they should be in a beehive. For me personally, again, I'm not telling you guys how to do it. I'm only giving you my observation. A lot of times the bees don't seem to like it, right? It's petroleum based. That's one piece of it. Also, I have a real problem with cell size. I think you should let bees build their own comb. I'm a real big, you know, for me personally, I don't think I have any foundation out there now. I'm all 100% foundationless. I just give them a little starter. You guys know how to do this, right? I think it's beautiful when, I find that I have a higher contingency of drones, because if they don't have a specific need, and they may not need drones, their default is to build drone comb, is what I've seen. So I seem to have a higher contingency of drones, which is good for me because I'm also treatment free. And it's beautiful. Look at that. I love when they drift the comb together. Here, look. Well, first of all, I'm going to cry for a minute because I just sold that truck about a week ago. I love that thing. But I'm really about locally adapted stock. And again, man, you could sit up here and go on and on and on about why you should do it. I'm just telling you why I do it, because I found that I have much better results with bees that I acquire locally. Have I brought bees into Napa? In the last 15 years, I bought maybe 5 queens into Napa that I got from that guy, Sam Comfort. And what it really did to me was it kind of solidified. The last of them just died that was 2 years ago. The last one just died about 2 months ago. I find that the bees in Napa really have to be able to have a resistance to chalk brood. Every one of Sam Comfort's bees, maybe the reason I got them was because they were really strong VHS. And yeah, sure, they had VSH traits, but they didn't have an understanding fully of chalk brood. And I feel like here in Napa, with the overuse of fungicides, these bees have to have an understanding of that. And if they don't, they generally perish. I love my torch. You guys love your torch? I'd rather not work bees than go a day without my torch, man, for sure. I use that thing all day long. I don't know why I put this in here. Probably because I love how when you're doing a cutout and you take you can't do it all in one day. So you take that line, you can see very clearly where those bees built underneath it, you know? they drug that older comb down in there. You can see the color change. That tells me that that hive has a real will to live. That's a big thing when you're doing cutouts. What's their will to live? Oh, I don't like that to happen. Swarms. I don't know how you guys deal with them. We get a lot of them here. I find that depending on where the swarm is, you know, there are places where you know that they're golden. If there's a bee tree around that we've been watching, or if they swarm out of my own hives, man, they're golden. But if you go pick up swarms from out in the urban landscape, I don't know how great they are. I still hive them up. I love the thrill of the chase. Look, we'll chase them down big time, man. I got this van again with a platform rack. We could take anything that's up to 25 feet. We'll put a ladder on a ladder on a ladder. They don't get away, especially if they're my own. I'll chase them down to the end, man. Look, you can see I cut that whole limb off that willow tree at my apiary. You guys stick your hand in them? I love sticking my hand in a swarm until you get stung. Varroa. I don't know where you guys are on Varroa. It's a beast. I feel kind of sad because by the time I started keeping bees, even 25 years ago, Varroa was on the scene. I kind of followed like everyone else and treated it first, but somehow that just didn't make sense to me. In the early days, it was pretty easy because everyone was trying to move forward on it. But what we saw is, man, conventional versus sustainable. I was kind of hoping Robert would be here. I'm winding him up, man. The idea of, I feel like we're at an impasse. I've stopped the fight, man. I don't even argue with it anymore. I just say the reason I feel like I don't treat is because of open mating. And I don't feel like I'm doing the species any good. And it's really, really, really hard to lose bees. But if I'm going to hold them up through artificial compounds, doesn't feel right to me. It never has, so I don't do it. Everybody has their own spin, but for me, that's my big thing, is that I know that most of the genetic material for a hive is in that drone, and if we're holding them up, it's probably not a good idea if they're going to be out mating with other queens. And of course I have Varroa, man. I'd like to say I didn't have Varroa and my dog didn't have fleas, but sadly I have Varroa and I have fleas on my dog. I think you can manage them though in a sustainable way. I think it takes a lot, it's a lot more difficult than just throwing a bunch of chemicals at them though. And of course I do, the best thing for me, I feel, is to change the genetics, rear queens from your proven stock and replace the queens that don't have the genetic makeup to coexist with the mite, is my strategy. I've been on it for about 15 years. You guys I'm talking to you in December, so, you know, I'm welling up this time of year. Every year I take substantial loss, but I've always kind of been able to dig my way out of it. Of course, I have parasitized bees. I don't think because high mite loads definitely mean that colony will succumb to the Varroa. I'm not debating that. What I am debating is that it may not necessarily be a death sentence, right? I think that if you have high mite loads, you really got to be inside looking at your brood. You've got to be doing your mite counts. And the only time it gets tricky is when you start to see these huge, exponential mite growth in the late fall where you might not have a queen. And then it gets tricky and I say, hey, I'm treatment free, but I think there is a place where you can marry up two colonies, drop formic acid on both of them and kill every mite in the hive and start over. I feel like that's definitely an option. I don't think sustaining them if they don't have what it takes to if they don't have what it takes to coexist with the mite, you shouldn't sustain them. But if you have a colony that's big and bolstered up, and you have that has a good queen in it, I think there's got to be creative ways that you can marry them up in the late fall, pull out the bad queen, let the good queen take over so that your bad queen's not spitting out a bunch of drones in the spring. That's the big piece to me. I don't know why I like that picture, man. A bunch of drones. That's, you know, when that starts to happen, right? All those drones out in front of your hive. And then there's a little varroa mite on that poor other worker there. Hive density. Hold on, I'm going to cry for a second. I love that car, man. I feel like Tom Seeley really, that made sense to me to say having all these beehives stacked up so close to each other, really I saw much higher mite loads. I think that I have my own set of problems. They're probably very different than yours when I talk to Jerry about the hive density that you guys are dealing with. At least I could kind of get out a little bit more into the country, but we're talking about hive density inside of the urban area, but also the hive density within an apiary. To me, these hives are way too close, and we stopped doing this. These hives are way too close. Now, this is kind of the way I'm going. I have lone hives out in the middle of fields. I'm really very selective about where I'll put a new colony. What really started to tip me off about that was when I started seeing in town here, my fruit was falling off my tree, and the bees started to glean off the fruit and the juice from the fruit. I saw that was a really big indicator to me that maybe we had too many hives in that the environment could sustain in my area. And I thought that was something we all needed to talk about, right? Why is it that I could have, 20 colonies in my front yard, but the guy 2 or 3 houses down has 1 colony, right? I think we all need to look and talk about it together and say, maybe if we both had 2 colonies, everybody would do much better, right? I feel like hive density is something that we really need to be discussing as beekeepers. Here's a few other ones, man. I stick them way out in the middle of nowhere. For me, I get a lot of information from these trays. I find that all my hives have screen bottoms. I think that you can make it so that they're tight enough that the bees can maintain the internal core of temperature. I can't see why anyone wouldn't use them. Do I have them on all my hives? Maybe some of the smaller ones I'll put solid bottoms on, but I really prefer to be able to read this information. And once you start really understanding what's going on with the debris that falls through the hive, you can get almost all the information you need. It tells you so much. It's not only about varroa. It's about, you could see in that top slide, man, we'll wet our finger, pick up some of that pollen, smear it in our record. So we have a record of the pollen throughout the year. I thought that would be a good idea when Gordon Franke came to visit, and he said that if we scrape some of that pollen that we've been storing, and I've probably been doing this 5 years now, scrape some of that pollen onto a slide with some distilled water and send it down to him, he could have his grads read it and tell me what that was. Middle of the spring, February, March, April, I don't think it has that big of a deal. Man, now you should be reading that pollen, see what the bees are foraging on, and plant a shitload of it. In my opinion, that's the way that I approach it. And if varroa wasn't bad enough, right? Small hive beetle. Beetle started showing up here maybe probably 7 to 10 years ago. We did everything we possibly could to keep that thing at bay. We didn't have very good luck, man. Now they're everywhere. They're in every hive. They're in every cutout. They're all over the place. Do we see problems with them slime outs? Definitely. I talk about the provoked slime out versus a slime out that's unprovoked, meaning a colony that's just doing well and the beetle the beetle kind of take it over and parasitize it, versus one where a tree fell and all the comb got stacked up on each other and the beetle came in, right? I have had 2, maybe 3 unprovoked slime outs in Napa so far. I don't know that it's a major pest, but it's something that we need to be aware of. And how can we kind of keep them at bay? I find that things you could do is make sure that all your frames are square inside the hive. That's a big one. Don't give the varroa and don't give the beetle anywhere to post up. And if they have a place that they could get between frames and things and the bees can't get to them, you know, usually if I have a high beetle infestation, I go through the hive and clean up all that stuff and they tend not to stick. I always thought that was weird with the Kumaphos, right? Bear putting their name in the shape of a cross. It creeped me out, man. Records. Who was it earlier? George that was talking about making notes of the weather? I thought that was awesome. And then I thought to myself, it's a little bit what we do. Every time I go into a hive, I make records. And at one point, I was taking my son around with me, who's a Waldorf kid, and he opened up my binder to start doing drawings or something in my van while I was working bees. I came back, and all the notes were spread all over the cockpit of the car. And it made me think about what could I do as far as keeping the records on site. So I designed up this top. You can see it in the 2 middle slides. It's essentially a school desk. Every time I go into a hive, I make notes. I want to be able to look back. And I find that that's really 2 things. I think that kind of separates the boy beekeepers from the men. Like I'm always wondering about guys who don't keep records on their bees. But also that information you could glean from looking back on your notes is, you know, I find that's the best information you can get. Sometimes at my lunch hour, I'll just sit and read my old notes. And like, what was the effects of a manipulation I made a year and a half ago? What's going on now? Queen rearing. I'm not a big queen rearing guy. I don't graft. I don't know. Probably like a lot of you guys, man. I have a thing for queens. Man, I really have a thing for queens. I saw this picture. I don't know, maybe some of you guys have seen this picture. I didn't know what it was. I just saw it. I was out in my apiary one day and I said, man, I'm going to cut this comb at a diagonal. I'd read that book that you guys talked about too, about Bush's queen rearing book, the big fatty fat one. And I didn't realize it. I was just using the Miller method. It's my preferred method of queen rearing now. I'm not working at a capacity where I would be able to have more than 5 or 6 queens on me at a time. So it's very boutique. I find that it leaves a lot of the decision making up to the bees. And I find that I get really nice queens from it. You can kind of see where I did this one. I like playing around with it too, man. I like putting them in, you know, what my strategy is, I'll take, you know, when I start having a lot of queens, I'll break down a colony, get a working colony without a queen, and then pitch them 2 or 3 queen cells. course, I gotta put Oscar Mayer Wiener whistle in there. Why not? That's what it looks like a little bit later. I will, when I'm introducing young virgin queens, I cut out an area and put my queen cages in there. And then I leave them. So years later, there's all these queen cages in all my comb. With that guy, Serge LeBest, I worked with him a lot. I've been working with that guy for about 20 years. And of all the people, I mean, I really, really, really respect Seeley. I respect Eric Moosin. There's been Randy Oliver. All those guys are crazy beeheads. But really, the guy who's made me the beekeeper I am today, I owe it all to Serge. I really do. Mostly because he's a genius. I don't know if you know the guy. He's certifiably a genius. The guy's insane. But also he's right in my area. So I always felt very, very blessed that, you know, all I would need to do is give Serge a call, and he worked right up the street from me. So I got a lot of FaceTime with the man. There it is again. Man, please, please, this queen, work out for me. Please, work out for me. Please, Jesus, make this hive work. Montessori kids. I'm really blessed in the, I get to teach. And, you know, it's a rough road, this beekeeping thing, but I am truly blessed because I get to do bees full time. When I'm not working bees for other people, I get to work with these kids. I've been teaching now the vocation of beekeeping at the St. Helena Montessori School for probably 15 years. It's really beautiful now that, you know, some of these early kids are coming back to me after college now, and I hire them to work for me. You know, it's really great. I want to take a minute and show you one of these. Can you guys see this? Yes? Okay. This is a project one of the kids did.
Humans have been beekeeping for a millennium, but how they do it has changed throughout the ages. The common hive that you see today is called a Langtroff hive and resembles a large file cabinet. This design works because it is simple and allows easy maintenance. However, a more natural hive is a log hive. Log hives are simply hollowed out logs that have a small entrance that allows bees to fly in and out.
If you give them any kind of cavity, any kind of establish a nest, they will make the best of the situation. In fact, you can take a bucket if you want to, and with a little hole, and they decide to move in as a swarm, for example, they can make that their home. It may not be a good home, but they are very adaptable, and they will make the best of any situation.
While a live tree is the ideal spot for a log hive, these are rare. Most log hives that you see are dead logs or large branches that were discovered by tree cutters after having discovered a swarm inhabiting the tree. Live trees are the best because they are actively pumping out moisture from the tree. Bees create their own humidity, so after time, if the moisture is not removed out from the log hive, the log will begin to rot and mold. This is why beekeepers don't suggest keeping a colony of bees in a log for more than a year.
From what I have observed, I can say that almost all the colonies that I've observed or collected in trees were in the vertical part or semi-vertical part of the trunk or the large limbs. So you could see the long cones, that vertical cones that were in those cavities. Only in a few instances did I find colonies in limbs that were becoming horizontal. They were kind of sloping, but never really horizontal. At least, well, no, that's not correct. I remember one actually that was in a limb that had become horizontal, broken, and the bees were entering the end. I should say that particular colony was not very, very well. The bees that had moved into that cavity, the cavity was too small to be sure, and the colony was not thriving.
Harvesting honey from a log hive is not an easy thing to do, which is why only a small percentage of beekeepers do it. One of the reasons that people harvest from their logs is that the honey is extremely valuable. Honey from a regular hive costs about $15 per kilogram versus the same amount of honey from a log hive, which can be worth up to $100 per kilogram.
The way I see it is that when I look actually at the log hives that you have in Paris, they're beautiful. They are pieces of sculpture. They are pieces of trees, and you can touch the texture, the bark, and all of that is there, and it's wood, and that is really nice in itself. So I really like that aspect of things.
Despite their beauty, log hives are not very popular throughout the United States. This is one of the reasons that the St. Helena Montessori School is so unique. As of right now, the school has 7 log hives, one of the largest groupings of log hives in California. Log hives are truly works of art.
So that's something that we really kind of were lucky with that. I think we're up to 10 log hives now. Do they all live? No. But I feel like it's something that is important to me and important to work with the kids, is having these natural hives as well as the, our Langstroth hives. I think what total, I have stands for maybe 20 colonies, all spread out. The school sits on about 30 acres. So we have enough room that we could put them about. In the beginning, when way before Seeley was talking about the Darwinian thing, he was about spreading out your hives. So we started calling it setting up these apiary Seeley style, where they were at least 150 feet apart. One of the other things I really kind of fascinated with is this idea of Rudolf Steiner and biodynamics. And don't get me wrong, man, I'm not that woo-woo guy, but some of it really makes sense. A lot of it doesn't, but the stuff that makes sense does make sense. And to me, I think a lot about that and how he talks about this idea of the hive being the body, the BN, and the bees are like cells coming and going. All of that makes sense to me. He talked a lot about the idea of how you keep your bees and what happens when you break the propolis seal and all those things. Again, some of that stuff was a little much for me, but letting bees build their own wax and their own comb is definitely solid. I think that he recognized things back in the early 20s about the mechanism and mechanizing beekeeping and what would happen. And I think we're starting to see some of that now. I love borage. We set up a secret borage society, but that's all I could tell you, or it wouldn't be a secret. And I guess from here, man, I was kind of laying this out today, thinking about all these people that really made me who I am as a beekeeper. And, I just kind of want to thank Amigo Bob. I want to thank Tom Seeley. I'd like to thank Serge. This guy, Mikhail Thiel, and I think this guy's super solid in his beliefs. Is he a little bit further, I don't think you should leave bees unattended in things. I think you really have to be able to look at them, and it's a different time, and you have to be able to see the brood, smell the brood. It's not okay just to leave hives sitting without any management. Bee having isn't okay with me. I don't think that's the best thing for the species. But some of his rewilding project is unbelievable to me. I could get behind that. This guy, Steve Montgomery, he's an entomologist in Hawaii. The guy's probably, man, he must be 75 years old, man. He out-hikes me, he out-bees me, everything. And every time I fly over to the islands, I spend about 2 weeks with him once a year. Just an amazing guy. I want to thank Steve. Of course I want to thank Randy Oliver. How could we get to where we're at without Randy? How about Sam Comfort? This guy's amazing too. His understanding of beekeeping's far exceeds who I am. This gal, Emily Bondurst, Santa Cruz Bee Company, man, I couldn't be where I'm at as a beekeeper without her. And she spent many, many hours coming up here, spending time helping me work my bees. We both learned from it. Christine Kurtz. I love this photo, man. I just found this today. How many other beekeeping lectures get to do it in front of a Andy Warhol, Maryland, man? Come on. And my crew. And I feel like I couldn't do it with all the people that are around me who believe in this style of beekeeping. This guy Michael here, he's, man, we've done a lot of cutouts together, probably 15 or 20 years worth of cutouts. I think we counted them up at one time. Man, we're up there. We're well over 200 cutouts. Just, I feel really lucky that I have the people around me to help me. I don't know what that's about. I guess with this, I'm thinking that my time's about up. And I just want you guys to take my name and email. You look me up. And, man, if you find yourself in Napa Valley, by all means, man, give me a ring. Give me a couple days notice would be better. I'm happy to have ride-alongs. I'm happy to have people out to my apiary. I don't keep secrets. You could kind of see how I'm doing it. And again, I don't think I'm, anyone that truly special with groundbreaking stuff. I think we're just making observations, and we keep, like you guys, man, we keep moving ahead, and it seems like there's a lot of obstacles. I'm getting killed here, but with the fungicides, the systemic fungicides, I think, I don't know, what's your little group on the side, that beekeeping group you guys have? You guys were reading Jeremy Rose's book. He talks about it. I'm seeing that entombed pollen inside the cell, that brick red pollen, we think it's loaded with fungicides, and it's getting more and more challenging for me to keep bees on the valley floor. So that'll probably be my real next big investigation will be what is going on with why I'm seeing this crazy queen loss, sad really that we can't keep bees, in this environment. It's and I guess in the big picture, I'm just so glad they're not almonds and they're grapes and they're self-pollinated. Can you imagine if they were almonds or something, man, and they were something that all those, what is it? Crazy now. 3/4 of the nation's bees end up in our almonds right here in California. And then they would all rush them into Napa. I can't even imagine what that would look like. I don't know if I'd move. I'd probably move. So again, you guys have any questions about where I'm at? Are you guys on the same page? Where are you guys at in your beekeeping? I guess I would ask. I talk a lot with Jerry, but what about the rest of you?
Well, Rob, this is Phil. I think we're all, struggling with the same things that you're seeing and doing. And so some of us are trying to move to the treatment-free. Definitely, we have a lot of people who are on board with the local bee initiative. We're trying to move there. And it's a lot of discussion, obviously, as to whether that.
What is it that makes you guys want to go for the local bee
He
thing?
was an artist, went to UC Davis to.
Well, I think the big part is that, we think that, a local bee, can survive better and,
Right.
morph into something. The challenge, of course, is, do we think we even got a chance of making a local bee in the Bay Area with so many hives around here and so many, bees being brought in every year by a lot of people.
Right. I guess what I started to see, and maybe it wasn't so much us getting legislation amended as the popularity of beekeeping. And I see it now, even, I'm not opening any hives. It's too cold in Napa, these colonies are very small now. I feel like they're very fragile. I wouldn't open a colony now, but I pop a lid, and if I pop up in that lid and look inside the oval and there's a ton of bees right there, you know that, man, they haven't recognized the environmental clues that they need to be pushed down in the hive a little bit. I don't see those as bees that I would want to breed off of next year, right? I feel like they didn't quite get it. They should have started to move down lower in the hive, all because of that airstream. You can see it. The survivors move up and down. They need to have that, hoard that pollen and have it below them, and then they need a ceiling of carbohydrates. And if they're right up on the top bars of the top hive, I don't see how that happens without me pulling some major honeybee heroics and swapping out frames or something, Again, I'm looking for bees that can adapt to my microclimates. And even within Napa, the valley floor is very different than Angwin, right? Or very different than Pope Valley, all that stuff. That's why I look at locally adapted stock. And I find that overall, there are very few people, Serge is one of them, who's concerned with both. A lot of people are concerned with locally adapted stock, and other people are concerned with treatment free, but not many people look at both, right? I don't know.
Hey, Rob, I wanna make a comment to you, having lived in Angwin back in the 70s and watching beekeepers up there.
Uh-huh.
I'm down here in the Bay Area with the other folks.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that you probably know better than we do is what we call graping the entire habitat of Napa Valley. And so basically, in addition to all the things that you've mentioned, which are really great, and your artwork is so awesome, it's outstanding.
Thank you.
But, what we're looking at throughout California is loss of habitat. And in the Bay Area, it's worse than Napa.
Yeah, I'm really seeing that. But hold tight, Richard. Man, we just took a pounding with those fires. Man, talk about loss of habitat. We lost a lot. And the current weather pattern doesn't look like it's going to be supporting anything major. And I know it's still a little early, but here we are, middle of December, and we have had very little rain. I get that loss of habitat. I think that's just one of the environmental stressors. All these things, man, they're just, I feel like we just keep piling it on their plate and piling it on their plate, And at some point, I got to hope that either they have a chinette or they have one of those wicker holder things for their plate, man, because they're just getting stacked up so full. It's like when we go back for that second helping of potato salad, man, at some point it's over, man. The whole thing just, but I don't know what the answer is, man. I don't know. I'm not saying I have the answer. I don't have the answers. I'm with you guys. I think, we collectively, is it the grassroots approach? Is it going to be some silver bullet that one of these big, conglomerates come up with? I don't know. Man, I don't have the answer. I don't know that anybody has the answer. If they say they have the answer, I'd scratch my chin and say, I don't know.
I don't know. Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the work of Mark Thompson?
I am, man. I love that guy. I was going to say, he's the one guy that I didn't put in there. Of course I am.
I think we should come up for a visit.
Oh yeah, I love that guy, and I know him. I talked to him my early days of beekeeping.
Cool.
He's awesome. That I was still in the I was still very deeply immersed in the art world when I first started keeping bees.
Mhm.
And yes, he's very inspirational.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I
maybe-
love that guy.
maybe we
Is he
can
still
do-
around?
Yeah, we're working on a project.
You're working with him?
He's helping me.
Oh man, tell him you talked to Rob. He'll
Yeah,
say,
well,
"Oh,
no,
that guy out of Davis."
We'll take a field trip.
Oh,
Maybe
I would love to come. I
building.
never met him in person.
Yeah.
I have a lot of his books. I've watched a lot of his videos,
It's,
but I have never met him in person. Only talked to him a number of times on the phone.
it's taken a long time to get the face-to-face, but I think we're going to be working on this project. He's going to be helping me with it. I think it'd be a good thing for team building to come up and visit you.
Oh, great. Will it be related to bees?
Yeah.
Oh man, lucky you. Shit. Oh, lucky you.
Oh yeah, I might get you involved too.
Awesome. Well, you know where to get me, man. Beco, just look it up in Napa. You guys can track me down.
Thank you for your talk today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
What about other people? What do you guys think?
I'd quite like to say something.
Yeah. From Wales? No way.
I feel listening to this, I feel very fortunate to live on Anglesey in North Wales.
Yeah.
We have a long tradition here, which is kept up by the local beekeeping association, that we don't bring in bees from anywhere else. So we've done 33 years of beekeeping. We've never bought a queen, and very few other people have brought queens in. We've had one or two people who blamed their poor beekeeping on not having the right queen and imported queens. But fortunately, they were usually such bad beekeepers they lost them 5 minutes later. So we do have a genuinely locally adapted bee that responds to our very variable oceanic climate. We're in a very windy climate, and during the summer we often get a whole series of depressions coming from you lot across the Atlantic, and periods of a week when we have rain and the bees are confined to their hives. They are well adapted to this sort of thing, and the queen will often lay off laying for a week or even longer sometimes if conditions are adverse. And they never seem to exceed, their brood rearing doesn't usually ever exceed the climatic limitations we have. And also, we don't really have any intensive agriculture, use of pesticides or fungicides on the island. It's virtually free from that sort of thing. So I consider ourselves very lucky in this respect.
Oh yes, Wally, man, I'm so jealous. And my bee veil is off to you, man. We're holding tight with that locally adapted bee. You get it, man. You can see it. It's a little black bee, right?
Yeah, yep.
The little bee.
What we don't have is a lot of, I look at some of your places, you've got a lot of open space. We don't have a lot of open space. The land usually belongs to somebody else and is used for that. And we are lucky to be hosted by, we've got several apiaries, and we don't keep more than about 8 colonies in any apiary for the reasons you were saying, that it just exceeds their capacity to be supported by the local environment. So we're lucky in that respect.
On that.
Sorry?
Is everybody on that bee page? Like,
so no.
Who moves in and drops in 40 colonies? Everyone kind of gets it.
Virtually everybody's on that page. Yes, I mean most of our beekeepers treat, and the sort of standard treatment in this area is a thymol in the end of the summer, and then a midwinter treatment with oxalic acid by the trickle method.
Right. Anybody out there able to do it without them?
Yes, there are people. Yes, there's quite a group of people in North Wales, particularly right in the extreme western part where we are, which is called the Llŷn Peninsula. There are quite a lot of people there who don't treat. We're fairly new at the game.
Yeah.
We're just we're just getting to the end of the 3rd year of having a non-treatment apiary.
Wow, bravo.
And during that, we started off with 5 colonies. We've now got 11. And during that time, we have lost just 1 colony, probably for reasons not at all due to Varroa or deformed wing virus.
Yeah. Wow, good for you.
What we found is that most of our queen losses can be blamed on the queen having an infection of deformed wing virus. It's a sexually transmitted disease. They in the hive. They can be fed by worker bees that are carrying deformed wing virus, and they don't get it. But they're virgin queens and they go out to get mated, and they meet with a drone who is carrying that infection, that's where they get it from. And these queens, various things happen to them. Most of them don't last very long. They become drone layers. Basically, they don't survive their first winter. Wow. So what we've got round to now is we've found that early in the season, queens mated in, for us, which is late May and June, have a vastly better chance of forming, lasting a long time and being healthy than ones mated later in the season. So we try and avoid getting queens mated beyond the end of June, and it just gets progressively worse after that. And that is as the Varroa population builds up and the proportion of drones that are carrying deformed wing virus increases, so their chances of mating with a wrong one increases. This is what we find, and we most of our queens last 4 years, possibly 5 years, and we've recently had one last 6 years.
Wow.
So,
look at these.
We are very fortunate.
So everybody here, these other 56 participants are just saying, oh my God, that guy, man. It sounds like A, you're on the right track, and B, you're in a very good situation for keeping bees.
Yep.
So many challenges here, man. But, and I had heard that before, there are STDs from these drones. I don't know that we're seeing much of that here, but we are definitely seeing other issues with queens. Weird stuff starting to happen with queens here in the valley, you know.
So Rob, how long are you seeing queens live? Are you getting a?
Me?
Yeah,
nowhere near 4 years. If I have a 4-year-old queen, I'm like beside myself. I have a swarm that I picked up from Ben and Jerry's. It was on a umbrella out there, and that colony lasted maybe 4 years, 4 or 5 years. That's it, man. That's my longest lived colony. But I have daughters of that colony, of course, but not the queen mother. I never get anything near what Wally's saying. How about you guys? Anybody seeing a queen that's 3 years old?
Well, it's California. I never found, I always had a hard time keeping a queen after 4 years in California because they don't get that rest. When I lived up in Washington, the queen bee lasted 6 years. When I did my first, work with internship with the beekeeper, we never went through a queening the whole time I was with him. But in California, 4 years seemed to be the best I could do. I've got one colony with 4 and one colony with 3 right now.
Are you treatment free?
2 colonies. Well, I feed my bees teas. I mean, if I can eat it, the bees eat it. And I don't know if you consider that treatment or not.
I have a hard time with some of those. I think as long as you're, getting a knockdown on the Varroa, I try not to do anything if I can. But,
It's still cleaning up those little teacups, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think also that, where do you draw the line? If I have to feed them, I do feed if I have to, especially now in some of those areas that were totally burnt out. And, I may not be lucky with my queens, but I'm certainly lucky with hives going through fire. Man, I pulled some colonies out of areas that were toasted, like seriously, fire zone, burnt to the ground, everything around them. I didn't lose one colony from the fires. Fires from the 2017, those fires came up on hives, bubbled the paint, and I still didn't lose the bees.
Yeah.
So I've been very lucky with that, but I'm not so lucky with queens, man. I wish I had a queen that lasted that long. I would, I do my best to, I just keep finding that I breed off my survivors, breed off the survivors, and taking really good notes. I buy into that thing with Seeley where he says, keeping bees in one box. You can do that in my own apiaries, and then when they swarm, you catch them, and then you go in and grab any of the queen cells, right? And then I distribute those queen cells up and down the valley. I find that that's been really good for me, and I'm seeing reoccurring stock. I name them weird hives, like the birdhouse hive or whatever, So I'll have a number of birdhouse daughters.
Are
So
your
I'm finding
hives,
that
are you
seems to work.
sharing your queens with other beekeepers or just your own apiaries?
No, I do my best to share. I'm not that guy. I don't say, hey man, I clutch onto it and hold onto it and say, oh, I have the best bees in Napa. No, I disseminate them, man. I spread them out there.
The rising tide.
I'm under the belief that, man, they're not my bees. They're not Wally's bees. They're not Richard's bees. They're not Phil's bees. They're not all these Jerry's, KO's, Wally's, all these people. Alvarez's bees. They're our bees. They're not mine. They're not yours. Open mating makes it so we should be sharing and also being aware, right, of other beekeepers, but we have a responsibility to the feral population as well, in my opinion. I don't know how, I feel like those are going to be our real survivors in the end, right? The ones where we're not sticking our finger and meddling with them all the time. You guys agree with that, or you with that in saying like, hey, they're not your bees, are they, Phil?
No, I'm right with you. I give away 20 hives a year.
Yeah, good for you, man.
Do you feel that bees are a moving target and pathogens are a moving target too, or do you think things are kind of stable?
No, God, no. It's all a moving target, man. Yeah, it's all a moving target, and it keeps moving. Once we get it sorted out, man, then the next thing's going to happen. The next thing's going to happen. The sad thing for me is I'm looking down that tunnel, man. That long, dark tunnel. I'm not seeing any light at the end of it, Jerry. I'm not even seeing a flicker at this point, man. Someone in this group show me a flicker. I'm like looking down at it, I'm like, oh man, I'm not seeing anything down there. It's not looking good. I mean, I don't want to be that guy. And I keep a PMA, believe me, positive mental attitude. You've got to, man. You've got to keep up hope. I got to be that guy for the kids. But, I don't know. Man, Robert says he's got 0 Mike Queens, Randy Oliver. I don't know, man.
I have a question. You've got Randy up on the top 5 influential people that you read, and yet he's a treatment guy. And I'm wondering, I would love to be a non-treatment guy. I use oxalic, and that's pretty much my only treatment.
Yeah.
But so besides the treatment thing, what are the things that you take away from him that would put him in that position?
Randy?
Yes.
Oh, I think Randy's incredibly knowledgeable on all aspects of beekeeping. You don't need to, just go to one of his lectures.
Oh, I do.
Man, and I've lectured alongside of the guy, and he just puts me in the weeds, right? Let alone I'd never go up against him in a battle of wits. He'll slay you, man. That guy.
Yeah, but on the other hand, On the
You
other
know,
hand,
I think that he had a lot of interesting stuff to say about chalk brood in the early days when he was doing all that research on chalk brood.
okay.
That stuff was really important. I mean, what other things did I take? Oh, bear fencing. Whenever I send anybody for bear fencing, how about those 3 articles he wrote about the fat bees and the fertilization, right? You guys read that?
Yes.
He has a lot more to say than just.
Oh, I know he does. But a lot of times people that are treatment-free have a tendency to push away information from those that aren't.
Well, look at me, man. I just fucking poked the big old Robert McKinney bear there a second ago. Dude, I'm the guy that says, you know, like, I've learned a lot from Robert. I've learned a lot from Randy Oliver, just because I don't subscribe to their practices. And I'm the first guy to stand up and say they have very valid points, man. Any treatment-free person that disputes the mite bomb isn't in the game, man. They're sitting on the bench.
Yes.
Not only are they sitting on the bench, they should go get me a Gatorade, for crying out loud. Man, it's crazy. There is a mite bomb, man. I've watched them myself. But if I want to be treatment-free and I put up my Bee Scouts honor to you guys, right, and do what I can not to let these bees CTD, circle the drain to a point where they're either going to abscond or they're going to, have bees rob them out, why can't I be treatment-free? I'm taking the loss, right? I think you can do it. It's doable.
Yeah, I think the interesting part of that is that the mite bomb that Randy talks about has disadvantages for people in the area, and having the bees out loaded with mites impacting other beekeepers.
Right. That's why if you're going to be treatment free, you best be, you can't be treatment free. You need to be on your A game if you're going to be on bees, man. You need to be in those hives looking at them. And I'm not just talking about pulling trays and doing mite rolls. You need to be looking at that brood, because you could have high mite loads and the bees are tolerating it, right? And I'm not saying that that's the end all. You've got to do something about it. But I've had bees with really high mite loads and I'm not seeing any problems in the brood. You can tell when you're going to have a mite bomb or you're going to have, well, I guess if you're talking about a mite bomb, you're talking about bees that abscond, right? Is that the mite bomb you're talking about?
No, before that, when they're building up to, they're losing their population. The queen is still laying, and you know that they're not where they should be.
A severely parasitized colony. That's what you're talking about.
Perhaps. Yes.
Yeah, man, you got to do something about it. You don't sit around and say, I hope this gets better, and then put in a statue of the Virgin Mary and hope it works out, man. It's not going to work out. The Virgin Mary or JC, man.
I'm going to buy a few of those statues and use them this year.
I know. I'm being very, very facetious.
Yeah,
right?
no, I understand.
I'm just saying, like, man, and that's the artist in me. But I'm just telling you, you can't leave a colony that's severely parasitized and say, I'm going to say a Hail Mary and they're going to work out. They're not. That's the reality of it. That's the Randy Oliver. And that's the get that piece. And I tell people that are treatment free the same thing. I'm not running around saying there are people that dispute the mite bomb, and I tell them straight up. I'm like, you're not in the game. You're not in the game, right? Go sit back on the bench because you're a B-rate player if you're saying there's no such thing as a mite bomb. They are so very real. When they abscond, have you ever grabbed an abscond and do a mite roll on them? Try that. You'll see. They're loaded with mites. The hive they left with is loaded with mites, right? I think that you can catch them, Hal, at that point you're talking about, where you see that you have a severely parasitized colony. If least case, cage that queen, man. Throw her in a cage. They have beautiful cages from China now. I hate to do that, but where you could communicate. The workers could go into the cage with her. Those are great, man. They're so nice for that, because they could still spread her pheromone around, so they won't make a new cage. If you throw her in a wooden wire, they'll make a new queen, even if it's not the right time of year.
Correct.
So throw her in a communication cage and leave her there for a month. Is it the solution? No. Will it break the mites? It'll help, right?
Brood break, yes.
Break the brood cycle. That's a real solution.
Yep.
Is it the end all be all? Release her and she's going to start laying compromised eggs again. But if it gets you through a period of heavy mite loads so she doesn't turn into a mite bomb, then good. Find a new queen for her, right? That's what I say.
You know what I'm hearing is that it's live or let die. And if they're going, they're gone. And, you know, that's kind of a little bit of what's out there. And it hurts us. And I don't do a lot of treating.
Right.
And so, you know,
I'm not saying live and let die. Where are you hearing that?
No, I'm not hearing it from you.
Oh, I'm saying jump in there, man, and do something.
Oh, no.
Don't let them
No.
die. It sucks
Pardon
when they
me.
die.
I'm not hearing it from you.
Okay.
I'm hearing it from some folks that are treatment free.
Oh, yeah.
And
I hate that. I really do. And I don't think they're doing anybody any favors. I really don't. I think that the treatment guys have a very good point about that. And it's very different for me than all you guys. You're living in a very densely bee populated places, man. Right? I would be really upset if you had that guy who was 2 or 3 doors down that wasn't managing his bees saying, "Oh, I don't need to do that." You're like, yes, you do. You do. You owe it to the species to do that.
You know what? I love that. You owe it to the species. It was a great talk tonight, and I so enjoyed your time, and thank you so much.
Robert's bugging on Cynthia Perry. Look at him, man. Whatever. I think that everybody's got their spin, man. And you just do the best you could do. But in the bottom line, like I said, how I try my very best. I'm not saddled up to these bees financially, so I'm able to do what's right, or I feel what's the best I can do for the species. Whether it hurts me financially, you know, I get a little bit nerved out right now. Can you see? I'm biting my nails. Dude, I think my own personal bees, I have 5 colonies. Like, that's all I got, man. Everything else I have is out there, and I'm managing for other people. So, you know, just, I believe, do what you can. And that whole thing with those 2 Indians pointing the guns at each other, man, that's where we're at with the treating, non-treatment thing, man. We're at an impasse. We're not getting anywhere. They say it's our fault. I say it's their fault. It's like, you guys, we just got to figure out how we're going to do it and kind of coexist like the mites and the bees, right?
And when our country gets to the point where we can do the same thing and we're not so polarized, maybe we can learn something from them as beekeepers.
Maybe. Just wear your mask, man. Wear your mask.
Yep. And wash your hands.
And wash your hands. There you go. Hey, I'm going to offer it up one more time. Then if any of you guys find yourself in the North Bay, man, NorCal, please look me up. I would love to sit and talk to you about bees. If you're a treater, I'm not going to jump on your back. God, come out and see what I'm doing. I'll show you how I'm doing it, and we could talk about it. That's all I could do. And you know, that's the best thing, is the dialogue, right? You down with that, Jerry?
Sure. You know, it occurs to me that people who breed seem to be rather selective and somewhat wearing blinders when they decide to breed. If they're only breeding for Varroa rejection, I don't think they're seeing the whole story. And that's one of the points you brought out, because you want your bees to be able to cope with your climates and microclimates.
You know what it is, Jerry? Back in the day, man, let's go back 10 years, 15 years, and we had our little tally sheet. How were they at, what was their temperament like? What was their hoarding pollen like? What was their honey production? All these things, and we added it up, and if we came up with 15, we would breed off them. Man, that stuff's right out the door. Man, I don't look at any of that stuff anymore. I look at the ones that survive, and why are they surviving, right? That's what I look at, and I've had pretty good success. And that, and a little bit of that kind of the cobbler's kids' shoes approach in my own apiary, my breeder apiary where my farm is. I watch them. I'm not saying I blindly neglect them. I'm popping the lids. I'm looking in. I don't aggressively go through those hives. When they swarm, I grab that queen mother at any cost, whether I'm at 5 feet off the ground or 50 feet off the ground. I'll grab them with that van again, right? I don't let them go. And I spread those bees out. The beautiful thing is everybody that I work with is totally open to this. So I don't have to clutch my genetic stock. Not one of the people I manage bees for would tell me, no, I can't breed off them, because of this dialogue I've had with them, the same one I'm sharing with you tonight, right? We're in it for the better of the bee, right? It doesn't do you any good to hold on to that good queen if you have this great genetic stock. Let us breed off her. The whole thing, man. It's a crapshoot, man. It's a crapshoot anyway, right? Unless we start talking about artificial insemination, which I'm not going there. That feels even not right to me at this point. Who knows, man? Things are changing at a rapid pace. Talk to me next year and I might say, yeah, man, I'm inseminating queens. I've got to keep the Napa bee boat afloat, right?
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
What kind of percentage losses are you seeing during the winters?
Holy smokes, man. This year, I'll say, I like to think I'm, Greg, I'm managing about, I say 100 colonies. I don't want to know for sure. And I've lost 15, 20.
That's good.
Not bad,
yeah. But
still get digging out of that. When I ordered those bees from Sam Comfort, he spent a little time here with me, so I got to know him, and I felt like I was in a dire point. It was either start treating or looking very seriously at introducing some VHS stock into my breeding pool, right? And so that's what made me deviate from saying I'm only locally adapted stock. Those are the only bees I brought in. I think he sent us 20 and I kept 5. The other ones went other places around, and they all died, man, in quick, short order. And it made me realize that what we were talking about, Jerry, that they may be locally adapted to his thing and they may be good at recognizing Varroa, but they couldn't manage the chalk brood spores because we have such a high level of them from all the fungicides they're spraying. You guys don't see nearly the chalk brood that I see. I see tons of chalk brood. And it's not like the old days where you say, okay, I'm just going to pull the tray and vent them a little. That's not how you have to deal with it. It's much more serious.
have you ever tried? I've heard there was a Clorox spray treatment.
I did. I tried that. It seems crazy feeding your bees bleach.
No, they don't feed them. They spray them down. Apparently, that guy, the colonel does it.
Yes. Now, tell me the difference between spraying them down and feeding them. You spray them down, they're going to all lick it off each other.
Well, I don't know. But,
yeah, man. Okay, I mean, I get it, but I didn't.
It works.
I didn't have much with that.
Yeah, you know? It's kind of a weird one.
You give your.
That was interesting. I had a really high. I had a high chalk brood hive. I was out with Sam Comfort, and that queen, he took her out and he was holding her hand, playing around with her, and she flew off. And that's why, and she never came back. She never came back. And that's why I hammered him. Man, you owe me a queen. You owe me a queen. You owe me a queen. And that's why how I really got into it. But those bees couldn't handle it.
I thought that bird just said penis.
What?
Cat Melita's got to turn her sound off.
I can't hear her.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Hey, Rob, I have a question.
sure.
So, Wally, at Wally's presentation, he had talked about, so as we're grafting and making queen cells, and I got from Wally's talk that it's better to let the bees decide what larvae becomes a cell, because they would know better than us going into a frame with eggs what is going to make the better queen.
Right. I agree with Wally 100%. That's a lot of the discussion that Sam Comfort's having. Am I dictating where they build queens when I do that Miller method, cutting the comb at a diagonal? Yes, you are. But still, you're giving them some options. The best queens I find are when you let them swarm. And you could watch it. If you see that colony, especially if you're in your apiary and they dispatch, man, I'll go through the swarm, catch that queen, cage her, put her back in the swarm so she can't leave again, right? And my first primary order of business is go into that hive of that colony that made swarm cells. Oh, those are the biggest fatty McFatties there are. Go in there, cut them all out, leave the big fattest fat one for them, and take the rest. And then because I do really good notes, I know, okay, this colony at, Long Meadow Ranch, I have a colony that's compromised. Throw them a new queen, right? Pull the old one. The other thing is I have probably 15 years of queens in test tubes and alcohol. Every time I kill a queen for that, I write on a vial of, I took a bunch of test tubes when I was in the veterinary field. I write on it, throw her in the alcohol, and I hold on to her. Why did she fail and where was she from? I don't just throw them out. Sometimes I eat them, but most of the time I put them in the vial. And then you let the new colony take over with that proven stock. That's what feels right to me. And I could kind of do that here, right? I don't know.
Yeah, so the whole idea of pushing the survivors and kind of makes you wonder about even how worthwhile is it to take data, to capture your data, right? Because all you're worried about is survivors, then
right.
Who really cares? All you care about, did they live?
Right. I feel like I need to know where they came from. The main things I ask, Gregory, are I want to know where she came from, the origins of her, and where was she mated. That's really important to me, where she was mated.
Yeah,
so,
right.
You know what? I use those little tags that you do for fruit trees. I write on those little tags. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
I don't know where can I?
Yeah, what I'm saying is if you're gonna breed queens or make queens, you make them from the ones that have lasted the longest, right?
Livestock tags are another option.
Yeah. Hold on. I don't know where am I.
Ear tags. I put ear tags on my bees.
Well, they must have big ears.
What's that? What you put on yours? I was looking around. I was going to show you guys something that would blow you away. I keep all the tags, and I have a little box of them, and I probably have easily 300 tags from all these bees from where where they came from. I use those tags and then staple them on the side of the hive.
Yeah.
It just gives me an idea. Then I could take it and move it with the hive. I really just want to know basics.
All these hives you're managing, these 100 hives you're managing, how big an area are you covering to manage those hives?
From Carneros to Calistoga. I have not many. I used to go up and over the hill to the east. I never went up and over the hill to the west. I do 3 in Sonoma, and I have 1 in Pacifica, and I have 1 in San Francisco.
Whoa, that's a lot of traveling.
But I spend time down in Pacifica anyway, and I didn't want to get into that. I didn't even really want to go into Sonoma, but I like, know what I love working with? The restaurants. I love working with the restaurants because the guys they're very, very creative. It's not only about honey, it's about propolis, it's about wax, it's about larva, it's about all the different things. Here in Napa, they like honey. Don't get me wrong, especially if it has a cool story attached. And I'm good at telling stories. But you know what they like? Fermented nectar. We're talking 3-star Michelin places. And like, they just love it. They like the idea of playing around with it. When I deliver honey from the French Laundry, I give them honey. They dilute it down now with water and inoculate it so they can get fermented nectar. They love fermented nectar. That stuff that they tell us for years and years. Any of these books, man, pull any of them. And they say, you're an inexperienced beekeeper if you harvest that honey with too high of a water content.
Interesting.
I love it. They're very, very progressive. These young chefs. So if I get called out to do something like that, we have the same mission, we have the same values, I might get involved with it.
So I'm impressed that you can manage 100 hives the way you're doing it. And like, how often do you get to see them? Because I mean,
monthly.
Once a month.
Once a month.
That's not very much during the spring because they can.
Oh yeah, dude. That's why. Well, I have a team of people.
Ah, I got it.
But the problem I'm running into, Gregory, is COVID.
Yeah.
Like all my people, I was so lucky. Emily would come up from Santa Cruz. Amy, another master beekeeper I met in the program, would come from Grass Valley. I had beekeepers coming from Guerneville, but they would all come and we would hang out and talk about bees at night and work bees all day. Man, I'm on it solo, and you're absolutely right. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So I'm training another kid that I'm working with here locally, the gal that does all my honey and helps me in the honey hut. I'm training her to be out there, at least popping lids and pulling trays. But, you're right. It's hard. 100 hives, getting to them once a month, or if you have a problem.
Yeah.
Nice
I don't think it's enough. Like with me, I missed in the last spring, I missed 1 week and they swarmed on me.
Oh no, I keep way ahead of the swarm game.
Yeah.
I'm watching that very closely. Some get away? Come on, Greg. If I'd be lying, man.
I gave my
swarm. You. Some get away. They must.
Right? I caught my swarm and gave it away.
Here's the other thing, though, Greg. Most of these are on farms. So they'll call me. They'll say, hey, Rob, one swarmed. Come get it, Or I've trained them and left them gear. Like, hey, man, remember that? We went over this, man. We went over this. Remember that? No, I have people on the farm that'll do it. It's not like the bees are out in some of these areas that are very remote, but some of them are right in very populated and they see them fly.
Do you know Jennifer Berry?
Out.
Pardon me? I do. I've heard of Jennifer Berry. I met her a couple times at the Sonoma Club, right?
Yeah, she's.
Or no, Marin.
Yeah, she's pretty cool. She breeds, her queens are like 3-year-old queens is what she works with.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm impressed with Wally, man. 4-year-old queens, no problem.
Yeah, jeez.
I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, but
we don't usually breed from our queens until they're 3 years old.
You can't breed from them until they're 3.
For the simple reason that we like to have them for a whole season and see what the colony is like. And then we can make a better choice of which ones we breed from.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Wally, 100%. How can you judge a queen until year 1? At least year 1. Pardon me, Sue?
Different species of bee.
Yes. I know. I feel bad for, the good brother Adams, man. They nixed his buckfast out of there. I was over in Ireland, and they're trying to clean up. They're trying to get where you're at. They're like, man, they want that buckfast bee out of there. he works so hard at it, though.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, Rob, what can you say about you worked a lot with Serge Lebesque. He had some great ideas. What are the things you gleaned from Serge?
Everything. Like I said, I got a lot of FaceTime with him, and over 25 years, I got to know him pretty well. I haven't seen him in a while. He's dropped out of the scene. You know, I feel like I got to call him on a personal level and make sure he's all right. I did invite him to a couple of things we were doing out at my farm, and he said no because of COVID. But I haven't seen him in the game. I learned everything from Serge, man. He's so passionate, and he's so about the bee. He's like one of the few people that I've met that's just so into the bee and doing the right thing for the bee, you know? And I feel like he's really informed who I am as a beekeeper. But also imagine living underneath his shadow for 25 years. You know what I mean? But there's been many times where I've had problems, and Serge has worked them out with me, you know? I don't know anybody else. The other guy who's incredible is Moosin. I don't know if you guys ever worked with him. You know, he's a trip, man. He's part bee. He used to bug the shit out of me because he would tell me something, and then it would not. He would say the bees are going to die in 3 days. 2 days, you know, 20 hours later, the bees die. Everything he would nail everything right on a timeline, and just an amazing guy, man. So knowledgeable. You know, I really admire Helena and Bernardo, the two running the Laidlaw now, the Master Beekeeping thing. You know, I'm not in it to, you know, I feel like a lot of those master beekeepers all say, oh, I'm in it for, to better my business, this. Man, I just want to be a better beekeeper. And I want to surround myself with like-minded beekeepers. I've met some amazing people in that program, you know, and it feels great to me to be circling back 20 years later. You know, after getting a degree from the school, then to go back, it feels, I mean, I love the school. I have one my kid after the school. I love it that much. And I just feel honored that they see what I'm doing is valuable. You know, I think, yeah, but the biggest one is Serge, mostly because I got the most FaceTime with him. And what would blow me away, he's only been keeping bees as long as I have. And he's like so very, very knowledgeable about it. He must read books all the time. He reads all those books in French. You know, I would bring him books from France, and he would look them over and tell me what they're about. So I knew other people that worked with him and said the same thing. It wasn't only in beekeeping that the guy was a genius. He was like, he's incredibly smart, man. And I feel so lucky. Even though we don't get along sometimes, and I would know the thing with Serge that I found when I was really getting him pissed, because he would get so red in the face. And he would like put his hand down and smash his hand down and say, Rob! Like grit his teeth at me. I'm like probably one of the very few people that would stand up to Serge and like stand up and say, why not? Tell me why not? You know, there are very many heated debates between Serge and I at the little pumpkin patch place. We would get tea, and I would meet him I would go there and he'd meet me on his way home from work. And there are many days where I'm sure he probably pulled his hair out for sure. But again, I feel so lucky for that. You know, the same thing with Eric Moosin, that I got his time. I think we're all very, very lucky that we have these incredible beekeepers in Northern California, right? And they all seem, Randy Oliver's the same way, so giving of his information, and, you know.
Indeed.
Pardon me?
Indeed.
Yeah, I don't know. that's why I want to pay it forward, man. You guys know as much as I do, but again, I'll offer it up, man. You guys know where to get me. Come to Napa. Let's spend a day riding around.
Jumping back to one of the things you mentioned before, when you go collect a queen, do you take the tag from the mother hive and combine it with the new queen colony and put a different tag on the mother hive?
No, I generally take the one from the mother and goes with the mother. And then I start a new one that'll say,
daughter of.
Yeah, I either put QM, queen mother, VQ, virgin queen, and then I'll say, if it's a virgin queen, I'll say mated, and I leave that part open until I know where she was mated, because she might not stick at that place. They don't all stay at Boca, my little farm. Sometimes I take those young unmated queens, man, plug them up so they can't mate, and take them out to the extreme rural landscape. I want them to mate with some of that feral population out there. I find that tends to be a little bit higher. Another thing, Jerry, that I really think a lot about in Napa now, because there's so many people with bees, I think about Napa like a game of Monopoly. And I need a boardwalk, a park place, and a couple railroads in a row. So if I could get it tucked into a valley and manage bees at one end, and then have 5 to 7 miles at the other end, I raise queens at one end and flood drones at the other. And I cross my fingers and roll my dice and hope that my queens are mating with my drones. Not always the case, I know, man. And that's what you were saying, Greg. It's all a crapshoot, man, and it's a big crapshoot. I think, we could probably narrow down some of the things that would make it easier on us if we did artificial insemination, but how do you say I'm treatment free and I'm in it for the bee, but I'm going to knock her out with gas and, determine what semen we use? Doesn't feel right at this point. But again, things are changing, man. And you say, okay, am I not going to keep bees, or am I going to inseminate queens? Am I not going to keep bees, or am I going to bring in VHS stock? Well,
we all bend morally at some point, don't we?
We try not to. And Gregory, and if I could say one thing, I have not compromised my values and started treating for my business or otherwise.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
What
I
is
see a lot.
The question is, what's the definition of the
Guys
treatment?
get in this, and they're driven to keep bees alive. I don't get in that. Everybody knows that I won't treat their bees to keep them alive. I'll replace them for free, and I go into the weeds for that. I'll replace them for free. Not this time of year. It's hard for me to do that. But in the spring, I'll replace them for free. But I will not jump in the way of natural selection, and they get it. We're in a co-op. Man, I talk to these people like we're in a co-op. And it works.
The question is, what defines a treatment?
All of it, man. You could say mechanical treatments. We're doing mechanical treatments.
Yeah, you're doing a mechanical treatment. So
yep.
brood breaks, mechanical treatment. That's
but here, what defines a treatment for me is what effect does it have on open mating? Right? Mechanical treatments don't have as much impact on open mating, right? I'm not keeping alive compromised stock.
Yeah, anything besides live and let die will have an effect on open mating.
What's that part of me?
Anything you do besides live and let die will have some effect on open mating.
I don't believe that at all.
Absolutely, because those bees that would have died otherwise, you've made them not die.
No, you're not.
So
if you're just replacing queens, right? And you're trying to do the best for genetic stock. If you're sustaining her and she doesn't have the genetic makeup to coexist with the varroa mite, I feel like I do everything I can not to do that, right? That's where I draw the line. So I don't feel like replacing queens or, I feel like even caging queens and then releasing her once you get a brood break, that's not the answer either, because that's a mechanical treatment that later on she's going to be laying compromised eggs and then compromised drones that are going to go out and bring the whole system down, right?
Have you seen a increase in survivor percentage as you've kept this process going over the years?
Yeah, I feel like I have. I really do.
Okay.
From grabbing the bees in the last 5 years that I've been at this little apiary I have.
Right.
And it's got a bunch of these fruit trees, a little orchard that was neglected. So none of the fruit trees are taller than 10 feet. The bees swarm to those, and they're easy grab, unless they get into the willows that are much taller. But majority of them go into these little fruit trees. And certain times a year, I'll come out there and I'll show up at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and there's 5 of them dotted around at different trees. I grab all those, and then I harvest. I could generally tell what hive they came out of. They only go 25 feet, 50 feet. And then I go into the hive, go through the swarm and catch the queen, and then either rubber band her or keep her with her workforce, right? So she doesn't leave. I can't have her fly away, and I can't worry about it while I'm going through the colony and have to pull apart frames and look for queen cells, inventory them, leave the biggest, fattest one there, they deserve it, and then take all the others. Most of the time in that case, they're hatching out in your hand, right? It's something about it. As soon as you start moving the cells or whatever, something happens. They'll start hatching out in your hands. I can't tell me how many times that happens. Catch her, put her into a wooden wire with some attendants, and then go to some of these other colonies I have that are struggling. And hopefully she gets mated with decent stock and not a bunch of swag from the other sides of the track that have been brought in here and are being treated. And, you know, that's where I have a bit of a rub in the fact that what effect does my process have on the people who are treating, and what effects are their treating having on what I'm trying to do? Huge, right? They'll say, well, you go out into the rural landscape and go out way in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, man, let me take on the expense. Let me take on the wear and tear of my car. Let me take on all the, you know, like, how about you just try and do it so you don't have to? In my area, I'm not bugging on you guys. Jerry, Phil, Wally, you got your own thing. I don't even want to talk to you. I'm so jealous. And get Greg. You know what I mean?
Well, I heard Serge LeBest talk probably going on.
You've got such a density of population. From what Jerry was telling me, man, you got a lot of bees down there. And what I've heard is on one city block, there could be 12 colonies of bees. That's a whole different ball of wax, baby. I don't even know how I would deal with that. I try and make friends with everyone. Say, how are you doing it? 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 Right? I guess, I don't know. Say, well, come on over. Come to my farm and have a beer. Yeah. I don't know, man. I feel for you guys. But feel for me, because I'm rolling in this whole systemic fungicides. Man, you think the systemic insecticides are bad? Man, there's a lot of research being done, and I'm seeing it, man. I open up a hive, and they've entombed that pollen. You open it up, and it's brick red. Did you guys read that in his book?
Oh, what's this about?
Did you read that in this one, man? You guys made me back. You were reading it in your little group.
Okay.
Right or wrong, Jerry?
Yeah, that's what Phil's been coming from.
Yeah. And I started looking at it, and I'm like, oh shit, that's exactly what I'm dealing with. And I was noting it with Christine Kurtz for years. We were saying, what's this brick red pollen underneath an entombed cell? What we should do is send it off to Beltsville or one of those guys and say, hey man, what's in this? But then you guys read this one?
Not
for me.
No? This one's got a whole thing on it, you guys. It's crazy.
Who wrote that?
Diana Samataro. fungi and the effects of fungicides on the honeybee colony. A whole chapter on it. And she's saying the same thing. She's saying it's causing higher levels of chalk brood, which I already saw. I kept blaming it on the biodynamic guys. That's who I am. Well, you guys stop it, man. I was blaming it on the bio guys, the BD. It's not, man. It's the knockdown in all these fungicides. They're picking it up and bringing it back to the hive. And
So
then
are most of your bees out in rural areas or in?
it's really hard for me to not be around a vineyard that's
Okay,
spraying
so you're
fungicide.
always exposed to commercial chemicals.
Yes.
Okay.
And the thing is, we could get them off some of the other stuff, man. We might be able to talk them off of herbicide and say, come on, man, take on the expense to have someone do that manually. You don't have to spray Roundup. Well, Roundup's a lot cheaper. You're like, come on, right? You're not going to get them off the fungicides. They won't. They
What do
can't.
they use the fungicides for?
The fungicides are for the
Keeping the grapes from rotting.
you got it, man.
And
And
what
they
is it
don't
doing to
mind
the
it.
bees? I don't know what can you kind of bring me up to speed on that? What's happening in the hive because of it?
Because what's happening and my suspicion is that they're getting either the overspray of it or they're picking it up and they're bringing it back to the hive, the systemic fungicides. And when they go to store that pollen in the cell, you know, they ram the pollen in there with their head and they lay down a small layer of nectar. And that creates a lactofermentation of that pollen. And now that that's not happening, the fungicides are stopping that, preventing that from happening. They're not getting the lactofermentation, and it's not good for their butt guiome.
Yeah, but there's absolutely no nectar in the grape floret.
I'm not saying that it's not from the grape.
Excuse me, and there's absolutely no pollen in it. The grapes provide very little, if nothing, for honeybees.
Okay, Hal, that I agree with you 100%, man.
So
no doubt.
Where is that transference happening?
Getting it from the overspray. The vineyard's a desert for the bee, except for puncture vine, except for bindweed, except for all these other things that are on the low ground stuff. My suspicion is they're picking it up from that. Or that stuff's being washed into the waterways and they're getting it secondary.
Okay, that's valid. That's a very valid point.
That's why I'm with you, Hal. I'm always saying, send me a picture of a bee on a grape, you know, on a grapevine. Hey, Hal, they are picking it up off the crush pad on a year of really extreme drought. They're hitting that crush pad for sure.
So
right?
I have a small winery and I understand exactly, because they're a pain in the ass when they're hungry.
They are. And you start seeing that when we're in extreme drought.
Indeed. And we had it this year, actually, because the harvest was late, and the grapes, before they were picked, the bees were in there before the pick because they were shriveling, and bees can't get in the grape, but once a bird gets in there, that fruit is theirs.
Yep. I used to manage guys that grew scuppernauds. You know what a scuppernauд is?
Yeah.
Yeah. This guy grew scuppernauds and he made me take the bees away because on extreme drought years, the yellow jackets or something would come in, perf a hole in the skin. The Europeans would come behind them and physically go in the whole berry and clean out the whole berry.
Yeah.
Like I would come up and there would be a bee inside the berry eating it. Crazy.
Wow.
And the bricks, which is a sugar measurement in grapes at harvest time, is anywhere between 20 and 26 bricks, which is a really high sugar content.
Mm-hmm. There were times, Hal, where I did try it and I didn't stick with it because it fermented too quickly. But they'll take grape juice, pressed grape juice,
It sounds like you could sell a lot of stuff, and I think you should try. You should try post-harvest feeding.
You can, but it ferments really quickly. But I have fed them straight up grape juice inside of a ball jar with holes in the lid.
Really?
They'll take it, man.
Yeah. Well, it's very sweet, and it certainly has a flavor.
Yeah. I don't know what I was doing when I did it. I think there were times where we got a lot of extra juice, or as you can probably guess, man, a lot of my friends are winemakers, right?
Yeah.
So,
Actually, that's probably way more than a lot of your friends up there in Napa. It could be all of your friends, because that's the industry up there.
sure.
And God bless you for putting up with them.
Man, we got to do what we got to do.
Got to do it.
I think the best thing yet, man, best thing that came out of 2020 was Michelle Obama, right? When she said, shrugged her shoulders and said, man, it is what it is.
That is what it is.
Again, man, and also, if you guys are thinking later after you hang up and something comes up you want to ask me about, man, I'll be as open as I can and as transparent as I can. Again, man, my bee veil's off to this guy Wally Shaw. Jesus, man, you're doing the right thing. Man, I wish we could live like that.
Get up early, get them going.
Yeah. So, is there anything else before I bounce?
I think we're good.
Really do appreciate it, Rob.
Thank
you. Guys are
you.
awesome.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I'll still try and drop in on your little other. What do you guys call that side group?
The local bee initiative.
Yeah, I like it. I have sat in a couple times. So the one time I sat in, I felt bad because no one could hear me or see me. And I'm like, you guys, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Finally, I just jumped off. But I think I got my Zoom worked out, so I'm good.
Okay.
You guys all have a great night, okay?
Again, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you very much for putting this together for us. We really appreciate it.
No problem. We'll talk soon.
It was good talking to a fellow. I'm a Davis grad too.
Lost my sound.
Are you? Go Aggies.
Yeah, go Aggies. But I think I was there probably a decade before you were.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that school.
A great school, isn't it?
It is. So,
Yeah.
nice.
I think it was before the bee thing started when I was there.
At Laidlaw? No, man. That Laidlaw's been there forever. That was where Tabor came out of.
When did they get started?
I think that was back in Laidlaw and Tabor. And then Tabor bounced, man, and he headed to Vacaville. Then he grew up in hands and he sent him out of here entirely and went to France, didn't he? I don't know. Tabor's way before my time.
When did Laidlaw get started? Do you know?
Oh man, it must have been a long time ago because there's an old-timey beekeeper here in town who his father, and this guy's older than I am, his father was good friends with Laidlaw and Tabor. And he tells stories about it.
Because I used to drive around all that area. I never remember seeing that thing.
The Laidlaw facility?
Yeah, I drove around there quite a bit. Used to hang out, used to go jump the fence and go check out the primate center out there.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
That was fun.
Good stuff. Well,
Wally, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it. It's very interesting. Yeah. Very alternative look at it.
Definitely alternative look. Okay, thank you very
guys
much.
Have a great night. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Dewey, I see you're on too. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dewey.
Yeah, welcome. It was great. Great presentation. Rob is so energetic. Really.
Oh, no
really
way.
enjoyed it.
Dewey Cameron, get out. I almost
Hi,
hung up.
Rob.
How
I
are you?
remember reading about that Airstream, Rob.
Oh, man. Dewey, you're awesome. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. Hey, I need to touch base with you, man. I just picked up your book, the one about the Africanized honeybee.
Yeah.
You were in the mix, man.
Yeah, I started in Panama with them and chased them, and they chased me a lot of different directions.
Oh, you know, one of the kids at the Montessori school did his research project on it, and of course I knew about them, but I just became fascinated and bought your book, bought Winston's book. I just like, hey Dewey, really quick, man, can you answer something for me? How did those killer bees get out, man? There's no, and the kids keep asking me, like, was that a Kerr thing? And how did they get out? What's the consensus on that?
They knew they were defensive, so they had intended to do a whole complete breeding program, had a nice plan. Then they escaped, and there was so much pressure because they looked so good initially that they were distributing virgin queens to all the Brazilian beekeepers of the stock. So that's how they got out.
So it's not like an intern let out one. Talk about an intern letting one out.
They were at a railroad property in a eucalyptus forest, and apparently there were the guards on front of the colonies were taken out, and that was part of the decision that we got to get this stock out, even though we're not going to select it.
Wow. And so Kerr died last year, the year before.
Yes.
And he went to his grave riddled with guilt.
Yeah, because you know, he was a top-rate geneticist, and he really did want to do the selection, and it would have been a major undertaking, but he had the support of the Brazilian beekeepers. But it went south too quickly.
Did you ever meet him?
I did. Quite a man. Yep.
Man. Shoot. Yep. That's going to be us, man, later on, right? We're going to be telling our kids, oh, man, I hung out with Dewey, or I hung out with Randy Oliver, or I hung out with Seeley. Seeley signed my book 5 times. You know, that kind of thing.
You're talking about pretty impressive company to hang out with there, let me tell you.
Yeah, they are. Hey, man, I'm impressed. Just getting to see you on Zoom, man. It's made my night.
Oh, no, it was your presentation that made tonight. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah. You guys have a good night. I'm out of here. My girlfriend's calling. I got to go. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Rob.